Okay, we've got a tight schedule for today's webcast, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. My name is Thomas Meredith, and I'm the Senior Marketing Director here at RTM Consulting. I will be moderating today, and on behalf of RTM Consulting, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, The Fast Path to Cost Reduction in Labor, Parts, and Vehicles. Before we get started, at this time I cover a few housekeeping items. I'll be brief here. A copy of the deck is available. If you're interested in receiving a copy, please email your request to info@rtmconsulting.net and we'll send it out to you. Email address again is info@rtmconsulting.net. We are recording the webcast. Once it gets archived up on the site, you will receive an email with a link to the recording. It'll be a similar email as your reminder emails, automated from GoToWebinar. So feel free to watch the webcast back at your convenience or pass that along to anyone else in your organization that can watch it as well. We will have a brief Q&A session. We're only scheduled for 30 minutes for today's webcast, so we will have a brief Q&A session at the end. So throughout the webcast, as questions come up, please enter them in your questions panel there on GoToWebinar, and we'll cover those at the end. Okay, let me get out of the way here and we'll get started. Presenting today's webinar is RTM Consulting Managing Partner Randy Mislovic, as well as Bill Steenberg. He is Senior Vice President, Global Services at Pitney Bowes. Randy, welcome. I'll hand it off to you.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Thomas, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. I appreciate that very much, and I, again, want to welcome Bill Steenberg, our Senior Vice President from Pitney Bowes. Really appreciate it, Bill, you're being with us today, and Bill is going to share a case study perspective of the subject matter we're talking about today, and largely a topic that all of us in the field services business care about, and it's, really comes down to how effectively we manage labor, parts, and vehicles and the associated costs and service performance related to those things. And so today we're going to talk about using variability and variability reduction techniques as a way to help us do a better job of that. And Bill's going to share his own perspective of that as we go. As Thomas mentioned, we're going to go through this kind of quickly. We're trying a new format today. We're going to go through an important topic in 30 minutes and try to give you the salient points that we hope will add some value for everyone participating today. We're going to talk a bit about this whole idea of the cost-cutting paradigm, and every one of us have faced an FS around getting so much pressure on cost, and so many times that's done in a very reactive way. And we're going to talk about variability reduction concepts today in a way that we think you can use to help you build a better strategic mentality in your organizations about how you got continuous commitment to cost reduction, as well as just cost optimization and service performance improvements. Bill Steenberg is going to round us out with his perspectives on this in a short case study, and then we'll try to take questions at the end. So a brief highlighter on our company, RTM Consulting. We're based here in the U.S., a couple of physical locations. At our heart, we're management and operational consultants, and in particular, we specialize in services transformation for tech companies. Our innovative frameworks have helped lots of companies all around the globe get better at what they do relative to things on services. And today, hopefully, you'll have a bit of a viewpoint of that on how we think about field services, and in particular, how variability reduction can help you get better at what you do. This is available from our website. This is our representative client list. This gives you a sense for our consultative clients. So we have a growing training business to include, by the way, of course, variability reduction I'll talk about here shortly, and we have a certification program for resource management for people in the professional services space. So lots of technology companies we do work with all around the globe. Three things we're going to cover today that are real important. One is, and this word systematic is really important when we talk about variability reduction. What we have found is it really helps organizations move away from those reactionary approaches to how we optimize our costs and service performance, and move into something where we get a better operational improvement model that is more continuous in nature, and by the way, with more data that is sellable in the organization, so hopefully you can get more tops-down support to a less reactionary approach to cost optimization and service performance improvements. And so we'll talk about those things in a bit of detail. So So let me just cut to the quick on asking a simple question is I wrote a white paper recently, and I also put pieces of that white paper out in a LinkedIn post, and it was called Cost Cutting, Putting Your Operation on Life Support. And, I know that you can't do this with me today, but raise your hand if you haven't been asked to cut costs again this year while improving your service levels. Every field services executive I've talked to in the last several years tells me the same thing. New year comes, boss wants more for less, and particularly lots of pressure on the service organizations. And so, and unfortunately, when these requests come, we're trying to balance our efforts around strategy and building talent and managing our clients and of course, the financials of our business. So when these things come in these more, I'll say, reactionary moments, where do we end up spending most of our time? And when I ask folks where they spend their time, they say, unfortunately, I'm not getting out into those other three boxes and have time to really think about my business, to really focus on my people, to really help my clients, because I'm spending so much time trying to figure out how do I take 15% out of my cost line and do it in a short period of time and then deal with the repercussions of that. And thematic to what I'm going to share today, and I think some of what Bill's experience that he'll share with you, is variability reduction should be at the top of everyone's list about how they think about how am I going to approach doing this in a more systematic way, by a way that also enables better strategic results for the organization. So with that, let me just talk briefly about some variability reduction concepts. For those of you who aren't familiar, as every field service metric has a mean and an average, and variability around those things those performance metrics always occur around the mean. They're inevitable. And the main measure of variability that we talk about is called a standard deviation. So those of you who are Lean Six Sigma experts, you know what I'm talking about, and typically you'll have variability in service metrics around things like geography, the team, individual products, because geography is, as an example, labor costs are different, labor laws and regulations might be different. A product's a big, heavy product that requires lots of intensive support. Small consumer product might not require so much. There's lots of reasons why we have variability, but the key is to use variability reduction then to start to drive towards figuring out where there is normal variation and where there is special cause variation. And special cause, again, might be because, well, there are something unique about the product that causes it to require more service. There are things about the geography we're in that means our labor costs are higher. But we're trying to get really specific on data that tells us the difference between normal and special cause. And by the way, the difference between the various means that we have relative to our service performance metric performance. I mentioned before, variability is absolutely inevitable. Every field service metric has variability by geography, team, individual, product, as I mentioned normal and special cause variation. I would also mention, by the way, that variability, this idea of variability reduction, can also apply to basically any business performance metric that you have. Today I'm focused heavily on field services. We have a large group of field services people here joining us today. But this it could be applied to any other kind of business metric as well. I was talking to a services executive this morning who told me that one area that we could focus on is potentially we could apply it to sales. It could apply to marketing metrics, et cetera. But it at its heart has been used for a number of years in the field services space extremely successfully. I'll talk a bit about that. And of course, Bill, in his case study, will share his points of view about that as well. So variability reduction is, when I want to use an example, is we always have an opportunity then to look at our variability, and by, and in this example I'm using here, if you took the service call process and looked at or the mean time to repair in a particular organizational performance metric, if my mean was 2 hours and had a range of 1.4 to 4.5 hours, my question I have to ask is, what can I learn from the organizations or the people in my organization that figured out how to do it in 1.4 hours? And what do I learn from those where it's taken 4.5 hours? And by the way, if I can, in this example, reduce my long calls from 4.5 hours to 3.5 hours, I've now reduced my mean performance. And when you look at both service performance and the cost of servicing those particular incidents, you'll find that obviously there's improvements that go right to the bottom line, generally using the same people infrastructure that you have, or you've made improvements to those things to allow you to perform better and reduce your mean. So pretty much pick any service metric. It could be labor costs, mean time to repair, it could be average service call, it could be first call or first visit performance, your parts cost, your vehicle cost. Pick your performance metric. This variability reduction technique is really, really effective at helping people do that. So we've developed a variability improvement model that really has 6 steps to it, and it essentially starts with getting a clear definition of the problem, then collecting the data around that problem. By the way, data quality is pretty important. I'll talk about that in my critical or mission critical elements of doing this well, but the data collection is really, really important in gathering that data so that I can then begin to do analysis and root cause. So for those of you, again, who are come out of the Six Sigma world, you understand what I'm talking about here. So we use the analysis and root cause process then to build our Ishikawa diagrams, our fish diagrams, and then come up with countermeasures. So as we think about things that are causing performance that we don't want, by the way, and again, I would reassert, we're not just looking to figure out who's doing it poorly and how do we help those people at the wrong side of the mean to get better, but we're also looking at those that have figured out how to beat the mean and ask ourselves the question, what are they doing that's different than what the other groups are doing? And if you have a large group of people that are spread out over lots of geographies, lots of countries, different product lines, hopefully it's already clearly helpful to you to understand how different these things and elements can be, and so getting your arms around the very specifics in the form of countermeasures I can apply to fix these things really, really important. Implementing, then how do I actually implement the change orders to include, by the way, hopefully a good change management process that will allow us to attack every countermeasure, put it in place, test it, see how it's doing, make our refinements, get better at it, continue to manage with change management, and produce the result we want in the end. The process is extremely effective in identifying a root cause of any field services issue or performance metric you want to focus on. It facilitates a prioritized set of countermeasures to reduce variability and improve service performance. And by the way, forms the basis, I can't say this enough, systematic future improvements that will help you get better at solving those problems and reducing your costs while improving your customer services performance, and doing it on a continuous basis, and that's a really important aspect of this. So we have this continuous performance improvement model for using variability reduction that we either consult with our clients on in projects, or we provide courseware where we have a class to teach this methodology. I think when I hand the baton to Bill, he'll talk about in Pitney Bowes' case, they did both in that regard. There are 5 critical success factors I'll mention here that are important. One is this requires tops-down commitment, and I think Bill will touch on that from the standpoint of how he thought about this with his group. Education, really important. Culturally changing people's mindset as to why this is a good thing. It gets us out of a reactionary mode into a better planning and more predictive mode. Clarity of the mission, good data is really important here. If you don't have it, we'll help you figure out how to get better data for what you want to do. And change management, because a lot of times we're attacking cultural aspects of our businesses, and change management is really, really important. So I'm going to finish my piece up with just mentioning again, we do have if you're not somebody who wants consultative help, we have a great class that we have on this. It's our variability reduction model training, and we teach the model I showed you earlier. We either do it in class or online. It's $349 a person. We have volume discounts available. The next class is coming up May 17th, and it's done in 2 2-hour segments on the 17th and the 19th. It's all online, taught by a Six Sigma black belt and a field services expert. We've gotten rave reviews from the people who have been through the course, and it's a pretty minor investment but can pay big dividends. So So I just thought I'd mention that to you, and people can enroll right through our website, put their credit card in, and go. So with that, I'd like to again welcome our guest speaker, Bill Steenberg, Senior Vice President of Global Services at Pitney Bowes. And Bill, with that, I'm going to I'll advance your slides for you, and I've got your first slide up on the page, and welcome.
Well, thanks, Randy. Thanks for the opportunity to talk both to you and Thomas and to the people on the phone today, as well as for the great work that RTM did with Pitney Bowes on this one for us, right? So a little bit of background. As Randy mentioned, I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Pitney Bowes Global Services and have spent, a 39-year career in the services space, most of it on the operational side, some of it consulting, and they've brought operations as large as 28,000 people and $5.5 billion to much smaller ones. And this topic that we're talking about today is one I've been utilizing from a first-level manager throughout my career to provide some operational results. Pitney Bowes Global Services, just under 3,000 people, millions of calls. They have 1.5 million clients, and we have a true omni-channel delivery that we provide, and you can see in the lower right-hand corner. So certainly channel optimization, I think Randy, you and the team refer to it as shift to the left, is critical in determining the right place to take it for your clients and your financial performance, and whether you're providing that service on a machine or online or on call or on site. And the topic I'm going to talk about today is the on site, but I want you to understand that is you do operational variability initiatives, it fits within a broad strategy. So Randy, if you could just pull up, I really simplified a strategic view of a strategy I think that would be fairly relevant to a lot of the high-tech companies that are out there today. I mean, Pitney Bowes is company's been around for almost 100 years now, and it's a major transformation going on right now, company-wise and within our services business. We're doing that traditional transformation from a CapEx business model to an OpEx business model, and from an analog business model, surrounding just mail, to a very complex commerce cloud company playing a much broader role in the e-commerce space, with software and hardware and solutions that many of you just aren't aware of, but are the backbone for companies like eBay and Macy's and Harrods and retail, in 90% of the Fortune 100 companies we do business with. And the strategy we're following is fairly simple, right? You have to, everybody has to be focused on driving the top line. If it's not growing, it's going to die. And this is a big problem that drives you into this cost factors you have to go on. But, I always tell people, start with this strategic plan to go after your business model on the revenue side and get it right, because you're probably going to blend with our traditional technical services with professional services or managed services, outcome-based services, and everything as you make the business model transformation. But you have to have that right. And you have to have the strategies and the tactics and the lower level initiatives to make that happen. Now, to support that on the financial side, Randy talked about cost out, and are you going after it this year? I've kind of viewed it my whole life that optimization or continuous cost productivities are table stakes, and you have to have that because that's what funds your investment areas. And, within Pitney Bowes Global Services, we picked 4 investment areas. They're around technology, they're around learning development, they're around how to get the engine to grow, and around reward and recognition things that we're looking to do. So, again, under this cost or optimization, you have high-level strategies and lower-level, strategic initiatives, and then some tactical actions. And that's where variability management really plays well in a services organization. It is one of those things, there's a lot of things that have to systemically fixed if you're a field services leader side. And this is, we're talking about the parts we're using on site today. If you look at our cost structure, 67% is labor, 18% is parts for us, and 5% is all the stuff associated with travel. And so those big 3 at 90% of our cost. And so this line of looking at operational management, we have very strategic initiatives that are cross-functional with our engineering group. We go back to the commercialization process. There's things you work on with purchasing, but variability is a huge opportunity that is 100% in control of your operational leaders. So it's something very often where we look at all the other reasons why we're not delivering results. This is one when you pull the variability out and look at it, you say, holy cow, when you look at it. So for us, and Randy, if you just show those single slides, understand, I told you a 100-year-old business. This is one of the largest business units we support, and so there's $300 to $400 million in revenue in this business unit. And without the help of a lot of introduction of technology at this point in time, we're working on it and it's coming up shortly, we were able to reduce the cost per call from $91 to $74, 18.5% on our second biggest cost item that we have. And that's been phenomenal for helping us, survive by making the current business plan, right, and create ability for the company to give us decision rights on where we're spending it, right, because everybody knows, performance is the price of freedom, and in services, if you want those decision rights, you have to deliver the results. This helps us do that, and it also helps us fund our investment areas. In the way it was done was very simply what Randy had to say, because we utilize Randy's services, and I'm a huge believer in this process. What I really like about the way that RTM does it is, the tagline for the company, I'm not sure if I got it right, Randy, but accelerating time to results. And it's really a look at it from a commonsensical implementation view. What can you do? Now, one of the companies I work with, we had tens of thousands of yellow belts in our service organization. We had thousands of green belts, and we had hundreds of black belts, and invested millions of dollars in putting together a very robust Lean Six Sigma program. It was good. It was a good program, but it's a huge investment, and time to results are a little bit longer. What Randy's team's done has taken people with incredible, they're the master black belts. They've run service operations themselves. They teach it at academic institutions, so they know it inside and out. But they've done a version of Lean Six Sigma Light, that really, how to assess the problem, how to quickly implement it, and then how to put control functions so that you continue to deliver those results. We put 20, 30 people, I think, Randy, through your course globally around the world to take a look at how they could do it quickly in their own areas. And by the way, the big five Randy talked about earlier are really important. It was a struggle for us up front on the quality of data. You got to make sure you got it well. But those 5 simple steps and having somebody guide you through it. And I think it probably, if you take a look, we kicked that program off in the March-April timeframe, and look at the trend line you're seeing there, how quickly we were able to start capturing the results. And this was a really, really big part of gaining credibility, not only within the service organization, because we're now rolling out initiatives around labor and other areas, but by providing this foundational background and, the real results, it got a lot of credibility within the team. So we're expanding it all over. And as Randy mentioned, it's actually other areas of the company are now looking to see where they could do it too, because the speed on this time results. So with that, I can just say I wholeheartedly endorse and support variability management. If you have the vital few and that's not there from an operational perspective, you really ought to step back and think, look at your results and see, do you have, what are the variability around the key result metrics that you have, and give it. And then I just say to give serious consideration to how you implement a program like this is really important. And we found out working side by side with RTM that it was very useful to us. And with that, Randy, I'll turn it back to you.
Fantastic. Bill, I can't thank you enough for sharing your perspectives on this with the group here. Thomas, I'm going to turn it to you and let you, we've got a few minutes for questions, let you round us out with that, and we'll make sure we get down by the bottom of the hour here.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Bill, for your case study perspective there. We did have a couple questions come in. We do have time for a few more. If you want to enter them in your GoToWebinar questions panel there, we'll get them answered. Bill, I'll go right to you with this one that came in. It's as you were sharing your parts example, this question came in, are you using this variability reduction technique to help with issues around labor and or vehicles? What are your experiences with the other two?
Yeah, I would say not as much in vehicles yet. There are other lower hanging fruit we're working on the vehicle end and have worked on with good results. And if you implement a good process around them, we don't see as big a variability around that. And there's technologies like GPS, some of our own location intelligence software we have from Pitney Bowes that we use that allows us to have decent variability around that. But certainly from the labor end, yes. And we're just kicking off some major initiatives surrounding it. We had a time we were implementing a $160 million brand new system, top to bottom, CRM system, all services systems, et cetera. So we need to get the data in and get enough good data in the new system. We did spend a lot of time up front with the measurement systems analysis to make sure we're reporting it correctly in the same way as we go there. But certainly in 2016, by the middle of the year, the labor end will have a similar type of robustness that we have around the parts initiative now.
Okay, very good. Thank you. This one came in when you had the slide up about the class, Randy, and they're asking about the variability class and do we make it available privately? Short answer, yes, but I'll let you expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much however you want to do it. If you have a big group and you want somebody to come to your site to do it, we can do that. If you wanted to have attend one of our public classes where there are lots of companies participating, you can do that. In Pitney's case, they ran these courses by geography and they were private so that people could ask the questions that were confidential to Pitney when they did it. We'll do it that way as well. There are obviously some minimums on a number of students and those kind of things, but give us a holler if you have an interest to learn more about it. And as I mentioned, we'll do volume discounts for this as well. And it's a great class. And it's Bill used it, as he mentioned, to help with getting broader based buy-in to a technique that he believes a lot in, and we do too. And we think it's can really be helpful.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you for bringing up this contact information slide. I've got us right here at the bottom of the hour. I want to stick to our allotted time, but Randy Mislovic's contact information is up there along with the email address. Feel free to send any questions that you didn't ask or we didn't get answered. You can send those to Randy's address. First, I would like to thank everyone on the line. I appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Bill, I appreciate you bringing your case study perspective from Pitney Bowes. That was excellent. And Randy, thank you again today for your time and sharing your expertise on the subject.
Perfect. Bill, thank you so much for joining us. And to everyone joining us, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We'll be signing off now. Have a great afternoon.